Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Studio 78 podcast. I am your host, Nache from NacheSnow.com. Welcome. Okay, so I hope everyone is doing okay and is in good health. We're in some weird territory here. We're all staying at home. Well, some of us still have to go in, but I just hope that everyone is taking care of themselves. And if you have space to grow, learn, and rest, I hope you are doing so. So just wishing you good health and hoping that you will make it through this little storm of ours just fine. But anywho, I have on Enid Nolasco today from RAW Made. She used to be Witchcraft Branding, but recently she switched over to RAW Made, or shall I say rebranded to RAW Made. She also has, and this is a little bit of a hint on why she rebranded, she also has a business where she does live storytelling down in Florida called RAW Storytelling. So now you see how it all comes together. But anywho, at the beginning of this episode, she kind of just walks us through like why she now works for herself, and then some lessons learned from when she started Witchcraft Branding and why she ended up having to pivot in order to become financially stable. So really good kind of tips on branding, but also just good, solid business tips that she provides in this episode. So the first part is really just her story and some lessons learned. And then the second part, she gets into the 3 levels of branding depending on your budget and gives some really good tips on what you can do on any budget. And then we kind of end the episode just talking about photo shoots and Squarespace versus WordPress and all of that good stuff. So it's been a little bit since I really did an episode dedicated to branding. So if you've really been itching for that, you're going to love this episode. And if you just want to hear a good story of somebody who has done very well figuring out how to work for themselves, you will also love this episode. All right. Just a few housekeeping things. If you could open up your phone, go to Apple Podcasts, search Studio 78 and give me 5 stars. I really appreciate it. It helps people find the show. If you're listening to this on YouTube, if you just hit that thumbs up, I'd really appreciate it. And then also please subscribe to get not only the audio versions of course, the podcast, but I also do all my crafty things on YouTube to include, I just made like farmhouse garland. I do my journal stuff on there. So definitely subscribe if you like those type of things. And then last but not least, if you are at home and you're really trying to think through things and organize your life, check out my course, How to Organize Your Life to Make Time for Your Passion. It's free at NacheSnow.com/Skillshare, because when you sign up through my link, you get 2 months free. So not only can you check out my course, but there's also some other amazing courses in there. I love Skillshare. So yes, if you could do those 3 things or 2 things, I'd really appreciate it. All right, let's talk to Enid. Here we go. Hello, Enid. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here with you.
Yes, I mean, I just can't wait to dig into your brand and then pick your brain too, just about branding tips, because the listeners out there are hungry for more information to figure out how to make their brand even better for their audience. But before we get there, can you just, tell the listeners just a little bit about you and your background?
Yes. And branding is so juicy. So I'm so excited to talk about it. So my background is, back in the day, I wanted to work in TV and film. I wanted to be a TV and film producer. So I actually, originally went for that. And I was a video editor for 7 years, and I worked on TV sets and all that stuff, but the recession hit. And I don't come from a wealthy background. So, and a lot of people don't know that to make it in the industry, in the movie and TV industry, you got to work for free, like 14, 16-hour days. So at that time, I was like, I need a job that pays, and I kind of fell into marketing somehow. And then randomly this word branding popped up one day, and I had never heard about it before. This was over 10 years ago. I'd never heard about it before. And I kind of like went into the equivalent of a rabbit hole now, like something we would do on the internet now, but back then it was harder. And I was like, what is this? And I found that one of the few MFA programs and Master in Fine Arts programs in branding at the time in like the world. And I kind of signed up for it.
Like, yeah, let me try this out.
I'm still paying those loans back.
Right. I know. Right?
But honestly, it was the best thing that happened, because I realized that I had all of this media visual background and storytelling background that I can bring to the design world. And I already knew a little bit of design. I had done that in past jobs. So I really honed my skills at that point. And then that is where I became who I am now, which is a brand messaging and graphic design expert, because I can mix the brand messaging part from the storytelling and having a master's in branding, which is very analytical, and seeing branding from a business perspective. And then I also have the creative graphic design part that I can put it together and make some branding magic. And that's kind of where I'm at. Yeah, I now own my own branding and design studio. And I also host a true storytelling show and podcast, which is kind of like the philanthropical side of my studio. And that's where I am in 2020 somehow. I made it.
Neat. So a question for you. So what year did you transition from working for someone else to having your own brand? And was there like any overlap, or was it like, you got laid off in '08 or something? How did that work out?
Well, so I started having a side hustle, a branding and design side hustle. I would say about maybe 6-7 years ago, or more, but there were many iterations before one was successful. There was a lot of trial and error, and I never quit my day job during all of it, because I needed the day. I was married at the time, and I don't have any family support. It's just me. So I needed to work to live. And so I never quit my day job. I just work weekends and nights. I would say that it was in 2018 was a pivotal moment. So 2018, I was working for a award-winning branding agency full-time. And at that point, I relaunched my business. This is probably like 6 or 7 iteration at this point. I relaunched it targeting female entrepreneurs who were starting out, mainly coaches and healers. And once that happened to coincide with like the boom and the woo-woo, and which I kind of was already a part of myself in my personal life, but it kind of like became a thing. And that took off. And then what happened was that my day job saw the success, or the reported success that I posted on Instagram, but we all know that, I wasn't making enough money to live off of it. It was kind of like a little bit of side money, and most stuff was for free or like really discounted. But my day job saw that, and they fired me. For the first time in my whole life, I was fired. I'm super like professional, like type A 4.0 valedictorian. And they fired, yeah,
Wow. But they
they
looked at
thought,
it as that like competition.
not even competition. They said, they were like, oh, you're not putting as much effort into the day job that you are your side hustle, which was completely not true. It was
Wow.
not true at all, but it was perceived like that way because of how it looked on social media, because I was so good at posting.
Right. Because and that's
Basically.
the thing about social media, right? You can make anything look fabulous, right? And then sometimes
Yeah.
things don't look fabulous and they could be like making $1 million. Like
Oh
you just
yeah.
never
No,
know, right?
no, definitely not reality at all. No, so they fired me and then at that point, so that was September 2018, and then 4 weeks later, my wife of 13 years left me.
Ah,
So that those two things together happening so quickly, I was like, at this point, I have nothing else to lose. I'm just going to
mm,
go for it full time and see what happens. And I've been full time since September 2018.
wow.
So yeah, but I've been in the branding world. I've been doing branding for probably like 10 years now, 10 years. But in reality, as a full-time entrepreneur, it's like a year and a half.
Yeah. So my question, it's weird. There's this one podcaster and he calls this like the baby effect. And I don't have kids, but I feel like it applies even if you don't have kids or not. But how he describes the baby effect is basically there is like a pivotal moment that happens in your life, or a series of things that happen in your life that make you say like, oh shoot, I got to figure out how to survive, like change
Mm-hmm.
things in my life in order to
Adaptability.
figure out exactly how to pay
Yeah.
my rent, how to just like
Yeah.
make it through. And so to me, those were kind of like very big things where you had to figure out like, what is my next step? Do I go with my, side hustle full time and actually
Mm-hmm.
live off of it, or look for another job?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it was at the time when it happened. I was very, very lucky. I was like kicked by the universe to do it, because I know that if I had not been kicked and fired out, I would
Mm-hmm.
have kicked out and fired. I would have never quit, because I was always thinking, oh, I can't make this happen. Like I can't survive
Mm-hmm.
on my own. I would have never
Mm-hmm.
quit. I would have. This is a dream that I've had since I was like 13, of like working for myself, and I would have
Yeah.
never had the guts to leave, had I not been fired. But now looking back, I was like, I could have left years and years before, and made it on my own.
It's the
Um,
golden handcuffs because
yeah.
you
So I don't
got
know.
insurance, money coming in every
Yeah.
2 weeks.
Yeah. But at the
Yeah.
same time, I learned so much from these jobs that I had that I don't think it could have happened any other way, because what I learned in these agencies and in these day jobs that I had, I think are what make my business successful now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I learned so much. So it depends on the person. I know people who have been entrepreneurs since college, like they never had a day job, and I know
Mm-hmm.
people um, who like left years later, and they like had like saved money to be able to leave and had a cushion. There's all kinds of stories. It really depends on your personal story, and I think it also depends on how successful your side business is, and that requires a lot of sacrifice. You
Yeah.
need to make sure that it's successful before you leave, and that means that you're not going to sleep, you're not going to be
Yeah.
healthy. It's a
And
lot.
but
So
and
yeah.
everybody, I always tell people on this podcast too, being your own boss isn't for everyone because everyone isn't
Mm,
good at managing themselves.
no.
Like some
Yeah.
people need the structure of an institution, like some
Yeah.
people need to work for others, and there's nothing wrong with that, right?
Yeah.
Where other people need the freedom, right, to be their own boss and,
Right.
kind of, live off like their passion and dreams full time. But it depends on like your makeup.
Yeah. I even to this day, I'm having survived, like I say, for a year and a half. I am so aware now of my weaknesses much more than ever before. Like I admit that I am not good at sales. I
Yeah.
am not like I'm great at brand messaging. I am great at graphic design, but like the marketing and sales part is a whole nother monster that I one day want to hire somebody to do for
Yeah.
my own. Yeah. So I'm great at bookkeeping. for some amazing reason, but somehow sales is a total different monster. So I'm so aware now of those things. And I always say, if one day I realize this is not for me and I made not a mistake, but like it wasn't what I thought it would be, I'll happily go back to a day job. I mean, right now I don't see that happening, but like it's not black or white. I'm leaving my options open because you really don't know until you do it.
Yeah, for sure. So question for you before, I want to even dig into your rebrand, but right now you're witchcraft branding, and I can totally see the witchcraft branding falling into like the coaches and healing, because that's kind of like, potions and healing things,
Yeah.
And so just curious is like, how did you come up with a name? And then how did you, what were your tactics for getting more clients so then you could live off of what you were making?
Yeah. So there's a couple, I call them like dogmas to branding. Some people are of the school that like it's a business and it's not personal and it should be separated. And I am the opposite. I think that like whoever the business owner or owners or the main decision makers in the business, that their personality and their preferences should be part of the brand, because that's kind of like what makes them unique. Mm-hmm. So witchcraft branding, like I said, I had many iterations of this business before with many really bad names that I'm embarrassed to even share here. And it was always because I was always looking for the name that other people would like. Mm-hmm. And then I had this aha moment where, so I myself, like, I'm like love the supernatural things since I was a kid. I'm super like into witches and I do my own witch practices, and I have my house full of gothic stuff and vampires and all that stuff. So I always thought I had to hide that because, well, in the professional world, you needed to look a certain way, and I always hid all of that part of myself. And then I was in my personal life, I wasn't really like too hot. I wasn't really happy. And then I had this whole transformation where I really started getting a lot of self-help, and I started trying to be myself more. And this all happened to coincide when I was relaunching the business, and I still had the day job. I was relaunching it. And I, at one moment said, like, why am I not applying my own branding techniques to myself? Like, I need to be authentic and say who I am. And I am basically a witch. And right now, like, it's a big part of who I am. So why not call it witchcraft branding? And as soon as I did that, I saw people reacting. I would say that half the people that I told it to were like, you don't want to do that because if somebody is like of another religion, they're not going to want to hire you. And I was like, perfect. I don't want to work.
Right, because then they're not your customer.
Yeah, like perfect. So as soon as I decided to be who I am and like put photos of myself with my tattoos, with who I am, with my tarot cards, as soon as I did that, I attracted a ton of people that were into the same things that I was into and needed a brand. So I realized that no matter what, you just need to be yourself and you'll attract your people.
I think the old school way is like, you have to be this certain way, right? And if you don't fit this certain mold, you're like excluded. Like, you're not going to get, corporate customers. You're not going to whatever. But I feel like now in this day and age, even with all the, challenges in the world, that, people get like, okay, if there is a company or if you have a company and maybe because of whatever reason, there's a kind of a segment of your audience that won't buy from you, it's like, it's okay, because it's like, I'm not branding to that segment. In your case, it's like, hey, people who are kind of like into this and who like love this kind of like style and branding, these are my people, because then I'm going to have fun and excitement, actually creating like products that I love and not trying to fit into the norm, if that makes sense.
Totally. Yeah. My goal when I set off is like, I want to change the world of like healers and use no more purple. Right. Because there's so much purple in like the healing industry. And like, I want no more purple, no more glitter. That was my purpose when I first launched out.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah. And then that's kind of, I don't know if I answered the second part of the question, but just by being authentic, I did get a lot of people that like literally I would have people that would search witch branding or witchy branding in Google and I would pop up. So that was something that's where I got my first clients. And then from there, like I purely have a referral based business. I will say like 99% of my clients are referrals. So that I kind of grew from there. And then I just made sure to stay really targeted and niched at the beginning with the female entrepreneurs who were starting out a business, didn't have a lot of money and wanted to be in some sort of holistic field. And from there, things changed a lot, but at least that was maybe the first year or so of what we now know as witchcraft branding. That's how it went.
So, it's interesting because like for like the audience out here, when you talk about like knowing your target and, make sure you're targeting them, in what ways did you do that? Like making sure that you had certain keywords on your website, using hashtags and Instagram, because I think some people are like, okay, I know exactly who my target audience is, but how do I get them to find me?
Yeah. Definitely keywords on keywords on the back end of the website. I use Squarespace for all my websites, so it's really easy to add in like that SEO keywords in the back. And then I take advantage of my 30 hashtags on every single post that I do on Facebook and Instagram. Yes, definitely. Also, any photos that I would share would be of somebody that I think would resemble the target audience. So in my case at the time it was like a lot of women with like witchy looking women, a lot of photos of witchy stuff. I would like celebrate all the new moons and full moons and all anything that was new, like from new age theme. And then also the language, like I would say I would always be like, hey witches, or just like a lot of like magic stuff. Magic related words would be in my captions. And then also, that's kind of like for the witchy type, I guess. But I also targeted a lot of, entrepreneurs that were starting out. So I would I would like go on Instagram and I would follow a bunch of accounts of women that had a business, but it wasn't like pretty yet, but they were like starting out. And then I would just seek a lot of entrepreneurs that were starting out and try and connect with them and comment on their post. And I also did a lot of research in the beginning of like just local businesses around me that were owned by females and adding them to my email list. I know that's probably illegal, but I mean, this was at the time I was doing that. I don't do it anymore, but at the time I did do that. But I did a lot of research. A lot of R&D, like a lot of research, and then implementing that into ways where I can like have them know that I existed, because that's the hardest thing when you're starting out, is that how to get people to know that you exist. Right. So it wasn't anything super design or brandy. It was more a lot more just like hard labor. Yeah. Now
let's talk about the rebrand. So, right, like you've got like witchcraft branding. You're like, okay, I can make it. I'm making a little money,
Yeah. So in order to talk about witchcraft branding, what happened was, is in October. So witchcraft branding officially launched in September 2016 under that name. And then a year later, in October 2017, I launched RAW Storytelling, which is a live true storytelling show and podcast here in Fort Lauderdale, in my hometown. So what happened was that Raw Storytelling, it's a live show. I get about like 80 to 150 people each month that come to my show. They see my face all the time. They see my face all the time. I'm like, they get to know me. And then when that happened, I got a lot of people interested in working with me that were not in my demographic and not in my target audience. Right. So it kind of opened up. It opened up a lot. And then coincidentally, I was also not really succeeding with witchcraft branding because although I do love my coaches and healers, the majority of them, or actually my coaches and healers that are starting out, I should say, the majority of them don't have the money to spend, to invest in branding that would sustain me in my day-to-day. Like they could only afford a couple $100, and that's not enough to pay rent, right?
Right. You got to consider that. Yeah.
Yeah. I just didn't have, my business model was not good. Like I realized really quickly that I didn't have a sustainable business model because there weren't enough hours in the day for me to work and charge what I was charging and based on what they could pay. So then at that point I was like, I'm stuck because I don't have enough. I'm still paying for it now. Like I'm still financially paying for that. It's not a mistake, but it was just me not knowing, right? So I wasn't getting enough money coming in. And then people were coming and asking me for work, and I was turning them away because they weren't quote unquote in my target audience. And then at that point, and then a third thing on top was that witchcraft branding and raw storytelling did not look alike at all. It didn't look like it was from the same person. So it was kind of like, oh, they love raw storytelling. It's what they trust. They come every month. They see me there. And then they're like, what's this witchcraft branding thing? Where does this come from? Right. So at that point, this was like, I guess like a year since first noticing this. And then me being okay with letting go of my baby because I put so much effort into witchcraft branding. It's such a solid brand. People love the name. People love the brand. And people love it, but there's just not enough money in it.
I mean, if it, and that's like a real thing, like, cause it's like great that you did it, right? You're like, okay, this is who I am. But if it's not sustainable then you have to be willing to pivot.
So yes. And then I love doing rebrands for other people. That's one of my favorite. When somebody comes to me with a rebrand, I'm like, I love it. I love that. So I always have done rebrands for others, but then now being in the client side, I realized all the emotional baggage that comes with it. And it really made me appreciate why people love to come to me for rebrands because it's like I needed a support system to like help me through it. So at a certain point, I after crying and not being frustrated, not knowing what to do, I would separate whole weekends to work on it. And then I would sit in front of the computer and just stare for 48 hours and not do anything.
It's hard to design for yourself, right?
Yeah. I didn't know where to start on any level of branding for myself or rebranding. So then I actually asked two other brand designers that I know. I was like, I need your help. and one of them came up. So one of them, we went through a whole coaching session and we talked about what I just spoke about now, about raw storytelling and the success that it had and how it affected everything else and how I could leverage that to get higher paying clients because the audience that comes to raw storytelling is of all kinds. So then that turned into, well, we need to rebrand the branding business so that it's open to all business types. And you're offering things for your starting out healers and also for like a company that's been around for decades and has a lot of money to invest, right? I needed to open up to all kinds. And for that, I needed to have a more quote unquote grown up brand. And for that, I also needed to make sure that it tied together with raw storytelling. So it made sense that it came from the same person.
Right.
So from there, we came up with the name RAW Made. And then also we came up with the logo and the look, and have it be like a sister brand of Raw Storytelling. So that was step one. And then I actually hired somebody who does the same thing I do, but she's in Canada. She's amazing. We've worked together on some projects. I hired her to do the design part of my rebrand.
Oh, that's so smart. That's smart, because then you're not, it like removes you a little bit from it. So you're not doing all the things for the brand.
I wanted her to surprise me. I was not excited about my own rebrand, and because I wasn't surprised by it. I wanted her to be like, look what I did. So that happened between late last December 2019, January 2020. That's when the design was finalized, and then Raw Made is going to be a thing as of March 1st. So officially, witchcraft branding will still be kind of like the main, like legally, it'll still be witchcraft branding, but like front facing, it'll be Raw Made, and it is going to be the perfect mix of myself, definitely still in there, but also like a lot more open to how I can help others, no matter what their business is, because the reality is that, like, even though I am very witchy and I love black and goth and all that stuff, even though all of that is true, I can definitely still brand a luxury brand, because I've done that for most of my career anyways.
Right.
Yeah.
And to me, it's like, it's interesting. I was listening to, I think, what was it? The Smart Passive Income podcast, and he had Ryan Levesque, I think it's on, and talking about like the 5 market must-haves, which is like a really good episode. I'll link it in the show notes. But one of the things he said, and I'm going to butcher it, so definitely listen to it, people, is like one of the 5 things is like, you need to make sure that your customers have money. You know what I'm saying? Like, because you say you can do something you're passionate about, like, right? It could be a great brand. It could be awesome. But if you can't make money from it, you can't sustain yourself, right? It's just business, So, kudos to you. Like, even though you loved your brand, for like realizing that and deciding to pivot. Now, question for you for raw storytelling. I have so many questions, but I'll keep it short.
No worries. I got all day.
It's like, so how did that come about? Because that's like a big deal, right?
Oh,
like,
that's a funny story.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So just tell us a little bit about it. How did it get started?
Yeah. So when I was at my last day job, the one I got fired from, my boss was invited to speak at Creative Mornings.
Oh yeah.
And he's very like timid and doesn't love public speaking. And he was like, I don't want to do it. And I was like, oh, I'll do it. And it was a total whim, because all my life, so since I was 4 years old, I've stuttered. And it took me, and at the time, I'm bilingual, Spanish and English, and something about that made it really hard for me to speak without stuttering, especially in Spanish. But I was able to start to control it by myself without going to therapy or anything. Around high school, college, I taught myself how to not stutter. And I was always so shy and so timid. And I would say that around the time when he got invited to talk at Creative Mornings, I started to realize that people didn't know that I stuttered. And I was like, okay, this is like incredible. Like, so when he said I didn't want to do it, I said, oh, I'll do it. Kind of like as a dare to myself that I could do this.
Yeah. I mean, because it's like, you got to challenge yourself, right?
Yeah. At the time I was 30, I was well in my 30s. And I was like, well, I gotta do this and see what happens, because I've been so scared to speak publicly. So I said, I'll do it. And on a whim, and I was depressed at that time. I was very sad. I was not in a great place. And I did it to like push myself. And I got up, it was May 12, 2017. I'll always remember that day, because I shared my story, and at the end, people came up to me and were like, I'm so inspired by your story. And I'm like, my story? Like, how could you be inspired by my story? And somebody asked like, oh, so what's next? And I didn't have anything planned. I didn't know what to say. I couldn't say witchcraft branding because I didn't want to do that because I was given the opportunity thanks to my current employer.
Oh, right.
I didn't want to promote something else.
Yeah.
And I said, I was blank, and I literally blurted out, I want to start a true storytelling show. Oh. And somebody, because I always had listened to them on podcast. I'm a huge podcast fan. Yeah. I always listen to other true storytelling shows on podcasts, but there wasn't really like one in Fort Lauderdale that I could go to. And I was like, oh, I should just start one here, but that will never happen. So I kind of said it, and with that intention of it never happening. And then somebody in the audience said, oh, come to this accountability and goal setting group on Tuesday. And I was like, okay. So I went to that, and no joke, 5 months to the date, since May 12, 2017, on October 12th was the first show. Because I went to that group, and they were like, I love this idea. We can help you out. And it was it took a village. And I had one girl find me a venue, another girl make cookies, another girl found speakers. And they promoted it amongst themselves. And like I said, they told their friends, and their friends told their friends. And I had my first show, and there was 80 people there on the first show.
Wow.
Yeah. And
that's the power of community, right?
Yes. Yeah. It's the power of saying your thoughts, speaking your thoughts, and community. Yeah. And then my intention was to do maybe 2 or 3 shows. And then it was well, I got to keep going, because I would see people meet at the shows, become friends because they meet at the shows. People would travel together. People would have business transactions, that they would hire themselves because they met at the show. It was transformational. It was really, it was just for me having the courage to stand up and talk, and everything else changed from there.
Wow. I love stories like that. I mean, because it just goes to show, because I always tell people, it's just put stuff out in the universe. I just put it out there all the time. And I tell people 80% of the things that I put out there usually happen in some form or fashion. And even if it's not exact, usually sometimes you're surprised at what happens, something that you never even thought of, the possibility of can happen to you. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, that was that goal. I still go to that goal setting. It's called Accent Club, and I will say it's been life changing. The community is such an important thing when you're building a brand, and in your personal life as well. You need a community of people that love you and want to support you and talk about you.
Now, here's the crazy part, because the listeners, especially the ones that live in the DC area near me, have been asking me to put something together, a networking event. And I've been trying to think about well, what should I do there? And what you just said really resonated with me, because I'm all about my bullet journal and productivity. And I was ooh, an accountability meetup or action group would be kind of perfect. So I'm going to sit on that. But see, people, this is how things happen, right? Conversations.
Yeah. I can ask me for his contact. I'll shout out to him. His name is Dynamo. He's the founder of Accent Club. He founded it in Miami, and there's multiple clubs around the world now. So I can put you in contact, and he can teach you how to put your own group together.
For sure. Yeah, definitely do that. And I will also, for the listeners out there, just link, his information in the show notes too.
Yeah.
So, okay, so you start doing this. Now, when you started doing this, because throwing events like this can be a little costly, right? Getting the venue and just the setup, depending on how you decide to pull it together. So did you eventually, at least, were you able to make a little revenue? Because, you're putting time into this.
Yeah. So no. So basically, right now, raw storytelling is self-sustaining. So when I first launched, I'm lucky enough that the venue donates a space.
Oh, awesome. Okay.
Yeah. And they have a cafe. People can buy stuff from them. And I'm really, really lucky that I am a designer because I made my logo, I made my website, I made my everything, anything, flyers, anything graphic design, I did it myself. So I had the huge advantage with that. That said, what I did do at the beginning when I first launched was the GoFundMe. And I got it wasn't even that much. I think I got like $500 or something. And that really helped me to get what I needed to get to start. So I did a GoFundMe, and then I basically asked for donations, and I get enough that it self-sustains itself. And then the next step would be to do a ticketed show. That is probably going to happen next year. I'm already planning of just having a ticketed show so that way it really sustains, it makes money. Because right now it's purely like a community project that is just self-sustaining.
But that's how sometimes things start. I've had guests on here talk about that before. Is like you start doing something free, right? Just test it out, see if it's sustainable. And then after that, you could figure out like, okay, how do I monetize this so I can continue to do this and put more time into it also? So no, it completely makes sense.
I would say, like I said, I'm lucky that I can do the design. I would say though that it makes a huge difference that the design is on point and that it's a solid brand. So if you don't have that capability, what I would suggest is to do a GoFundMe or to charge a little bit on tickets or get an investor or do something where you can pay somebody to do a solid brand, because it'll just it'll guarantee more success or success at all. I would say that the majority of things that I've seen that start out and kind of like want to wing it and don't want to invest in it looking great, they don't really go far.
I agree.
Yeah.
Now, question for you as we, wrap up here. But okay, so, for my listeners, I have some people that have been in business for, maybe 5 or so years. But I do have a lot of people who are just starting out. They might have like a candle business, block printing business. They might be trying to sell, courses on how to, paint water, flowers or something, but they're not designers. And so they probably, I would say the listeners, they know a brand is more than just like a website design and a logo. But they're kind of like overwhelmed because they're like, well, how do I even get started? Like, what should I even be thinking about when it comes to a brand? So any tips that you can provide?
Yeah, I would say this is one of the topics that I speak the most about. I speak a lot at conferences or like meetups around like South Florida. And this is the number one question. So this is the number one question. And this is what I say. So there's three types of levels where you're at. And for each level, there's an appropriate action. So if you are at the point where you don't have any money to hire somebody to do your brand, you're starting out, you don't have an investor, it's just you. Just start with the bare minimum. And that is two brand colors, pick 2 colors, pick 2 fonts, and a logo. And all this stuff, you can get it for free. You can go on Pinterest and search for color palettes and find 2 colors on there that resonate with your brand, with your style. You can go on, if you search, if you go on Google and search for Google fonts, they have, Google has its own font website where you can download fonts and they tell you what it pairs with, so you don't have to do the work. And if you search free logo maker, there's so many of them. All you have to do is write out the name of your company and a font that is within your style. And that's it. And then from there, you can go on canva.com and you can create your own graphics using these 2 colors and these 2 fonts and this logo. And you can set up your social media. And then if you want to do a website, you can go on Squarespace and drag and drop and make a website using these 2 fonts, 2 colors, and logo.
Yeah.
And that's all you need. Consistency is way more important than design, than the actual prettiness. Just consistency and professionalism takes you way farther. So that's step one. Once you get some runway with that and you have a little cash and save up, then you get to level 2, which is where you have money to hire somebody to do these things for you. And at that point, you can have a more elevated and tailored brand specific to your personality. And that's why you would hire somebody to do your brand, so that it's tailored specifically to you. And then it has like more things to play with, more like visuals to play with. So that's level 2. And I would say, so level 1 is like $0 to a couple $100. Level 2, you should probably save about around $5,000 to $7,000 for a good solid rebrand. And then level 3 is where you've been in business for a while, you're very profitable, or you're a startup that has an investor that has money set up for branding, and you can spend upwards of 10 grand. And if you do have that, well then great, definitely go find somebody in your style that you can hire from the get-go, and if you have that money, there's no reason for you to DIY it like the first level 1 person. It's not gonna give you more money. You're gonna get exponentially more sales and more money by just spending that 10 grand plus in a really solid brand that. And just so you see the difference between level 2 and level 3, it's the same quality of brand. It's just that you get more custom items. So maybe like level 2, you get a Squarespace site, which looks amazing, but is kind of like a template. And then level 3, you get a custom site that has a ton of functionality that is only you have it in the entire world. Right? So they're both great. You just get a lot more custom stuff. Maybe in level 3, you get a custom font that nobody else has in the entire world.
Right.
So just stuff like that to keep in mind. So those are like the 3 levels that I like to say. So depending where you're at, there's no excuse to not have a really nice brand as long as you edit and stay consistent and not try to go too crazy, just keep it simple.
Yeah. And I would say for number 1, and definitely if you disagree, I'm good with it. So you can be like, Nache, yeah. But I would say for number 1 too, like, people, please make sure you use good photos, like crisp photos, because when I go on the website and the photos are like, kind of like,
yeah, I know.
I'm like, I don't know if I want to buy this product.
A good resource. There's so many. Honestly, we're living in the era of like DIY heaven. Unsplash.com is, I still use that for all of my projects.
I know, right? Yeah.
Unsplash.com is free stock images. And like them, there's a lot more free stock image sites out there. There's no excuse to have a blur. And also, I do want to mention, like you said, yes, a branding is much more than a logo and a website. It is everything. You just want to look consistent in your social media and your website. When like on your voicemail, when people call, on your proposals or invoices, everything counts. But I would say that something that you can do with a couple $100 is invest in a professional photo shoot. That can take you so much farther than you ever think of. And I would say prepare to do one maybe like twice a year or once a year. And it shouldn't cost you more than maybe like $300 to $500 I mean, you get maybe even less if you say I only need like 5 photos or 10 photos. You can negotiate how many photos you need, and like depending on your budget, have a professional photo shoot done, because that takes you so much farther than anything else.
And I think too, like, I feel like people make sure you do research too, because even when I had my professional photos taken, just because, okay, I probably have a problem. Like when I start researching something, I go deep, like I'll look for days researching like photographers or whatever. But like once you decide on your brand, it's like you need to make sure that the photographer will capture your style, if that makes sense,
Yeah. There's
Because I saw some, but I'm like the filters and stuff that they used on their photos. I'm like, that doesn't match,
no.
like what I'm trying to convey with my brand.
Right. Do a little mood board. Everything, honestly, nowadays, everything, I'm sure if you Google free mood board templates, you'll find some.
Yes.
And what you do is you can go on Pinterest. I usually go on Pinterest and I look for images that I have the feel. I know this is so, it's not, it's just like a ethereal thing to say of the feel of a brand, but do your best to look for other photos that you feel represent the look that you want to go for, or your target audience, or colors that go with your color scheme, ideal color scheme or color palette. Look for textures that evoke like a feeling that you would like a client to leave with after they hire you, and take all these images and put them together in like a little collage, and then take the ones that don't fit out, leave the ones that do fit in. And then whatever you have at the end is your brand mood board. And you can send that to a potential photographer and be like, I want a photo shoot that emulates this mood board. Can you do this? Yes or no?
Yes.
So, yeah.
And because, and folks like, so number one, I'm a Pinterest junkie. I'll have a link to my Pinterest in the show notes. It's like, it's kind of ridiculous. I was like Pinterest person from day one. So like the number of people who go to my Pinterest like pins is ridiculous because it's a problem. But it's really good. You could have private boards, open boards, but it really allows you to think through it. And even if you're not a Pinterest person, Instagram collections is really good for that too, because you could save photos into collections. And I'll use that. Like if I go to the hairdresser, I'll have like a whole bunch of photos in a collection of like, like hair color or hairstyles. And I could be like, hey, here, look at this.
Yeah.
I'm looking to have this hair color.
I love that. Yes. Yeah.
But you can do that for anything, right? Like fonts, brand colors, whatever, but that mood board I think is a genius idea.
Mood boards. Mood boards are really great when it comes for like photographers really appreciate that because it's hard to like even me trying to explain a mood board is hard. Imagine trying to explain how you want your photos to come out.
Right, exactly.
So it's better to use visuals for that. I would say like Canva is great, a great tip for DIYers. Squarespace, like I said. A lot of people ask me about Wix and other WordPress. And I just say, Squarespace has beautiful templates. Just stick to Squarespace. Wix doesn't look as good, and WordPress requires a lot of customization. So just stick to Squarespace for now until you can hire somebody.
And people, like, we did not have a conversation before because in previous branding episodes, people know I think Wix, and if you have a Wix website, this is no disrespect. It's no disrespect.
I'm trying to be nice about Wix because I don't want them to like sue me or anything.
But the websites, some of them, some designers use it, and of course they're designers, so they look pretty good. But if you're not a designer, I feel like Wix, it's harder to make it look good. Whereas Squarespace, it's hard to mess it up. Like my website is on WordPress, but you all have to realize, like, I'm a designer and web designer by trade, so I know WordPress. I grew up with WordPress. It's easy for me. If it breaks, I know how to fix it, but I would never recommend it for anybody just starting out. Like, to me, Squarespace is amazing. And Shopify is good too if you really have like, you're going to have like an e-commerce site that's going to sell like a decent amount of products a month. Question for you, and then I promise I'll get to the wrap-up questions because I've held you for a little bit, I also am a firm believer in if you have the cash when you're first starting out and you can't afford a web designer, that you should spring for a premium template. What are your thoughts on that?
Specifically for websites, or like applying that to anything branding?
Well, specifically, I'm talking about, I guess you could apply it for anything branding, but specifically for websites. So like, when it comes to Squarespace, WordPress, or Shopify, I always found that I tell people okay, if you can't afford to get a designer, get a premium one. And a lot of times the premium ones sometimes also come with help. So if you have issues
Yeah.
like, with, doing something, or if there's any issues with the template, the premium templates, normally they come with like that developer help too.
Right. It's tough because it kind of depends on the person's like tech ability, because even the ones that do come with help, it's still hard for them to grasp what they have to do. So I mean, yes, I would say, of course, if you have the money for a premium template, go for it. And if you don't have enough money for a designer, then obviously go for the premium template. But maybe figure out figure out how much the designer will cost. Because let's say that the designer is maybe like a couple $100 more, or like something that's attainable within X amount of time. Maybe you're better off saving that money and waiting to hire the designer than just going for the premium template from the beginning. But if it's a big difference, if it's like you only have a couple hundred and the designer is thousands, then go for the premium for sure. So kind of do the research,
Yeah, and I feel like there's variables in it too, because like even if I look at Shopify sites I've created, a lot of times some of the premium templates have the style I'm looking for. Like if I have it in my head, I want, the home page to have like these elements to it, then to me, it's worth springing for the premium template versus trying to make the free template do what the premium template will already do.
Absolutely. Yes. And that's kind of, I apply that to like logos as well, where I've heard people say like, I don't have money to hire a designer, so I'm just going to get one on one of those websites that you can get it for like $100, right?
Right.
And then they're like, it's okay, I don't like it, but I already spent the $100, I have to use it.
Right.
This is a comment I have heard countless times. So
let go of the $100.
For me, that's the same thing with what you're mentioning, where it's like, if you really don't have any money and if you're really not tech friendly, then you can spend those $100 and you have something to use. That's great. But if you can save up to pay somebody to do it, then save up. It's going to be a lot better in the long run. But I would say that I don't know a lot about Shopify. And I've never really used it like myself. I never had products. And I usually deal either WordPress or Squarespace.
Okay.
And I will say that for me, what I tell people is like WordPress, that it's a lot of money up front. But obviously you're getting a better experience that is tailored to your needs, depending on what your business is. But also you need to pay somebody monthly maintenance to keep your site updated and to do updates as needed. And Squarespace, yes, you're paying for it. It's like renting versus buying. It's a lot more limited than WordPress, but you can go in there and make updates yourself whenever you need to. You don't need to pay somebody else. So they're both equally as valuable in different ways. So you first got to figure out what you like, where you're at, what you can afford every month, and what your tech level is.
I agree. Good stuff. Okay, people, no excuse. Get it together. So just a couple of wrap-up questions. How do you stay organized? Do you have any tools, software, or just techniques that you want to share with the listeners?
Yeah, I am an organized freak. I was mostly a project manager for the majority of my career. So I use Asana. Asana, out of all the project management apps, I like that one the most. And I have this. My biggest secret it's really I repeat data. I know it sounds like the anti-project management thing, but so I have my calendar that is color coded. and gets updated all the time. I also have like notes, like the notes app on my phone and on my computer that they sync, and I have information there as well. I didn't have this anymore. I used to have an actual planner on my desk, and I have spreadsheets, and I would repeat information everywhere because things fall through the cracks when you just don't look at one. Like if I don't look at my calendar, or my calendar like doesn't like update me, or doesn't like notification me, or doesn't sync, or something is not happening, then like big stuff can get missed. So I repeat data everywhere. I'm like a repeat. Like I just make sure that it's like my processes are like on multiple platforms. Yeah, but mostly I use Asana. I also love like to-do lists are great because as a business owner, there's so much to do, and it feels like you're not doing anything. Like at the end of the day, it's like you just feel like the day went by, you didn't accomplish anything. So I love the idea of having a to-do list that you can scratch things off. It is so rewarding, and it just gives you like more adrenaline to keep going. Yeah. So that's my other tip. But other than that, what else? I color code everything. I have color coded email, color coded whiteboards. I color code everything. I use Planoly for Instagram as well. Yeah, Planoly. Having a scheduling app for your Instagram and Facebook is very important. So that's my other tip.
Ooh, love it. And then, do you have a hobby?
Oh, my hobby is watching TV. People think I'm crazy.
But it's like you could turn your brain off, right? And
I am huge. Since I can remember, I've been a huge TV fan. And for me, TV is. I'm one of the few people that still pay for cable. It is my de-stressor. It's where I can turn my brain off, but it's also where I get a lot of inspiration. I did once like a coaching session, and like they were picking my brain on why I love TV so much. And for me, it's like how it's like magic how all the art forms come together. There's sound, there's visuals, there's storytelling, and they all come together. And I get so inspired by that. So of course I go to yoga, and I have friends and all that stuff. I don't have like a typical hobby per se, but TV is like kind of like what I always say is my hobby, because it's what I look forward to the most at the end of the day, of like getting to sit down and be inspired and just like and learn. I learn a lot from TV, so that it's been very a big part of my life.
And then also, I've been asking people this question because it was a big thing that came up when I did like a survey for my newsletter. How do you stay motivated?
I am very big into self-help. I didn't used to be, and I found myself unmotivated all the time. And then now I go to a lot of meetups and trainings for self-help. like in a week, maybe like two a week. Like next week I'm doing an 8-day training. So it is a battle with my brain. And I'm sure many people can assert, like we all have our demons, and I for a long time, I used to say that my brain was going to kill me because like I couldn't like turn off my thoughts. Like they were just like, it was like a spiraling hole. And for me, having somewhere to go that I said I was going to be there and people are counting on me to be there is really important. And I go and I work on myself, and I don't go to bar. Nothing against it. I would love to be somebody who goes out. Maybe I wouldn't be single, but my way of staying sane is to be around people that are like-minded, that want to work on themselves, and then just having really awesome conversations. And that fuels me. And I come back and I get excited to work and to live. I try to meditate. I'm really bad at being consistent with it. I try to do all these other like motivational quotes. I always forget them. But I think the one thing that I keep going back to is like group self-development.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then last but not least, where can listeners find the new website? Because by the time this comes out,
I'm so excited.
You'll be out there. So please let them know, where to find you.
So the new brand that I spoke about, RAW Made, you can find it at therawmade.com. And that's TheRawMade. And it's going to be RAW Made on Instagram, The RAW Made on Facebook. And also, if you love storytelling, true storytelling, you can find me every month on the podcasts, on all the podcast apps. And it's raw storytelling. You can search for there's a lot of raw stuff out there. So make sure to put raw storytelling. And there's a new podcast every month with 3 to 4 stories from the live shows. And if you're in the South Florida area, you can come to a live show. It is free and amazing. And you can find more information at rawstorytelling.org or Raw Storytelling on Facebook and Instagram.
Perfect. Well, Enid, this has been an absolute pleasure. I could talk to you all day. So thank you for sharing all the things.
Thank you. It's been awesome. I'm so grateful that you invited me to be on the podcast. So thank you so much.
Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that episode. Oh my goodness. So many tips. I'm not even going to go through all of them. All I'm going to say is go over to nachesnow.com/104. I have just recapped some of the tips that she provided. And then also all the links that we mentioned in the show, from Google Fonts to Canva, all the things are in the show notes. So that's nachesnow.com/104. And if you enjoyed this episode, please rate me 5 stars on Apple Podcasts or give me a thumbs up on YouTube. And don't forget to sign up for my Skillshare course at nachesnow.com/Skillshare. All right. Take care. Talk to you guys next week.